Hey guys, it's Matt. The topic of this video is something we've heard a million times in truth circles. We have to go work on ourselves. What exactly does that mean? We've heard that in a lot of different ways, in a lot of different places, but what does that mean? And it is a vague term, and it's something most of us really don't go do because we don't know the basics on how to do it. I don't know everything there is to know about go work on yourself, but I know enough to present this, and this is, at least in my opinion, the best place to get started. So before I start, a few quick things. A few videos back introduced the idea that we, the truth community, is definitely being used, played, and manipulated. We are integral in some way to accomplishing their goals, and I'm certainly not forgot about that. That is the most important thing that I'm focused on right now. This relates to it. You'll see how the entire, what you call consciousness or the mind of a human being has been used and manipulated and mind controlled to accomplish certain things. So this goes along with that topic, how ultimately not just the truth community is being used and played, but everybody is. So that relates, and I'm going to continue to work on that concept that I presented a few back because it absolutely hit me as this is something, or like in the Matrix, we are necessary. This group is necessary for it to get a certain thing done. One other thing before we get into this, the comment section here is more important than the video to 10 or 20% of the people that come here. They go over all the comments. It proves we are not alone in the way we think or see the world, sharing of ideas. I'm going to just, again, I've said this before, I'm going to step up, removing people from the channel, deleting. There's so much BS that comes through the comments. Overall, considering the amount of people here, it's actually pretty good considering the size of the group. But anybody that's just, there's so many trolls, tools, people constantly on me that I'm returning to the screen. Hey, dummies, little note here, dummies. My job, it's almost like a boatman to ferry someone, to get somebody from one side of the river to the other. All right? There's people at different levels here. My job is to look at the screen, show people the absurdity of the screen, and show people the manipulation is not human. It can't be pulled off by regular people. The same concepts are going to repeat. I will look at the screen from time to time, but then I want people to graduate out. A high school teacher teaches the same 11th and 12th grade things. The students go through the school. If you don't need to see anymore, you don't need to see anymore. Check out. I'm going to return to the screen to show people these are endless screen exercises and endless distractions. And then every so many videos, I always tell people, like this video, what are the most important things, how to withdraw from it. But the dummies will remind me, he says not to look at the screen, then he looks at the screen. So I guess the entire world will graduate together in terms of truth, and I just shut the channel down. Did you ever think that this, looking at the screen and then bringing it back to a higher level as to what's important, might benefit people below you? So anybody that is that stupid that would make that sort of a comment, any sort of comment that just doesn't move us forward, I look forward to deleting you from the channel. If subscribers numbers go down, I just don't care. Why would I care? There's a certain small group of people that support this channel. I don't make any ad revenue. Why would I care? All right, let's begin. How many times in our general pursuit of truth have we heard we need to go work on ourselves? We need to do self-work. There are very few of us who know what that really means. At this time, I don't have a full understanding of what that means, but I'll share with you what I know, or at least the best way to start right here. Now, first, you must realize that in this incarnation, in this fake snow globe, there are many, many aspects of you, what you call you. The list is far longer than most people will ever realize. So let's do the complete, unabridged list to get started. What is you? Well, one, of course, there's the body, the flesh, the avatar. Number two, there's the general term mind, which, of course, can be broken down further and further into a lot of different aspects. Number three, there's things that come from academia, like Freud's, id, ego, superego, the rest of Freud's mumbo-jumbo. It's one of the original truth drops, in my opinion, to get people to understand there are multiple aspects of what you call self, but Sigmund Seamonster Freud will deceive by getting people to think there's just these three aspects: id, ego, superego, and these three dumb things are all you are. Of course, keeps you away from finding out what you really are. Now, again, that sort of deception, is it by design? It doesn't matter. It was pushed forth, or fraud, and Freud was pushed forth and put on a plateau or pedestal by the system, because the system can use these things. Id is the part of mind that is very primitive, that just needs to fill its belly and have a sex act, and we'll just go through these. It's a waste of time to study fraud. But ego is basically what you would think about the ego and the frontal lobes and its pursuits. Superego has to do with consciousness, conscience, conscience, the moral aspect, controlling ego. If it ever crosses a conscious conscience, the moral side of that word. But if ego ever oversteps, the superego is there to take it and keep it under control. Of course, spiritual self and everything we're going to talk about here. Oh, Sigmund Seamonster Freud. Fraud doesn't mention any of that, of course. We're up to number 4. There's the conscience mind. What people believe is them in the conscience mind, the frontal lobes that thinks in the manipulative spellcraft of English or whatever your native language is. Language was laid down a long time ago in advance by the thing here that's not very friendly. The languages generally all came from the same ancient Cracker Jack box, given to the people, used by the minions as literal mind control spellcraft. The story of the Tower of Babel, to me, is one of the biggest examples showing that much of the Bible is allegory, or at least there's hidden meaning in plain text all over the place. Because I highly doubt God gave these minion jerks their greatest weapon against us to weave their black magic upon humanity. They gave the minions these romance languages, which is absolutely used against us. So, this is related to the Bible story. This is either a hijacked story or allegory. I don't think God, or what you would say God, facilitated the greatest tools the minions ever got. So why are they even called romance languages? Well, I didn't look it up, and I don't care what Wikipedia says the answer is. To me, it's because the minions are in love with these languages, at least the Western languages, and how they manipulate people to shape the reality that they want. Like, hello. Then, like we've talked about, there are endless phrases that are set up so human beings degrade or damn themselves, or root themselves to this place, or make ties that bind, or make contracts. Again, we talk about this all day. We've talked about this for years. When people say in this example, I'm only human. You just keep saying over and over, they're teaching you to say, I'm only human, which, that's like every time somebody says that, there is a noise or a bell goes off in the Illuminati Control Center in the Chernobyl Center. Cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. Just made contract, just made contract, just made contract, just made a tie, just made a Jacob Marley chain, can't get out. Oh, I'm only human. That person said that 40,000 times. He's rooted himself to the ground, to this 3D reality like a tree. He has no chance of getting out. Is that why I think a lot of these phrases and things exist in the language? Of course, that's what I believe. Okay, we're up to number 5. And just as a reminder, this is a complete list of all the aspects of who people believe they are and what society wants them to believe they are and only are. It's a huge list of things, but not the most important thing. Number 5, we talked about the conscious mind and thinking in the frontal lobes. Now there's the subconscious, what's under the water, the unconscious. Now, I don't care about the exact scientific definitions of each. Subconscious. Matt, you're not clarifying subconscious versus unconscious. So what? That's not what it doesn't matter for the purpose here, and actually grabbing onto what's important. All right? Where one starts and the other begins, I don't care. It would maybe be important to an MIT undergraduate on, say, a multiple choice test. and get your big $190,000 degree with multiple choice tests. Understanding subconscious and unconscious is just an acknowledgement, just a way for us to understand that there are processes going on under the water that we don't understand. That is something or some part of you that, for example, regulates sweat glands and knows how much hair to grow every week or to grow on your chin for a 5 o'clock shadow, hopefully just in guys. Blood chemistry, bile injection into the gut, all that stuff. Nobody has any conscious understanding of how that happens. So there's that part of what you call you. But of course, subconscious, unconscious is not just physical processes. Unconscious, subconscious processes can basically take you over, almost possess you without, quote, you being aware. For example, have you been acting like a passive-aggressive a-hole all day long to your boyfriend? Well, if you can step back far enough, there's a reason for it. There's a reason that you or the frontal lobes doesn't understand the way you're acting unless you really can, from a third-person perspective, basically look back upon yourself. And there could be a subconscious or unconscious influence making your personality the way it is in general or in that particular day. Now, examining the underlying cause of how you're acting is something that most people, these are things that all this stuff should be taught in school. Of course, they don't teach you anything you can use in school, but these are all things at least we have to be aware of. Seeing if your outward personality is being influenced by subconscious or unconscious, with the most basic example that comes up in everybody quite often is passive-aggressive behavior towards friends, family, or loved ones. And a key skill is realizing, when you're doing it. So just as a personal example, even as a 22-year-old or however old I was, very, very young, I realized eventually, after about 6 weeks, I realized what an a-hole I was being to my father, who I lived with at the time, because my entire office at John Hancock Mutual Insurance in Bryn Mawr was laid off. Entire office was laid off. I don't know, like 93. And I was running around all summer looking for a job, looking for work, when my friends were going down to Ocean City and Avalon and the beach. And I was all pissed off that, just I got settled in to the first job I ever had that I had off on the weekends. I wasn't working all day Saturday, all day Sunday. Then they laid the whole office off, and I was basically beating my dad up. And I realized it. It took me weeks to realize it. But even a 22-year-old that knew nothing about nothing eventually could see that, ooh, I'm acting this way for a reason. And again, there's a lot of other reasons past passive-aggressive behavior, but that's the best example. So again, number 5 is all the parts of mind that you'll never be consciously or frontal lobes aware of. Number 6. There's something that's described most often negatively in at least our circles called ego, which is the part of mind or a part of mind, but it's generally seen in these circles as a bad thing. Ego wants the applause and acceptance of society. It generally believes it can get out of control very, very quickly, and it can start to dominate, of course. It generally believes that the best things in life were crafted by these a-hole puppeteers. The best things in life, of course, just comes from the screen. Perhaps the ego, in general, though, wants an expensive red sports car because it's actually being manipulated by the unconscious parts, the underlying parts that is worried about survival, worrying about reproducing, the id. So although in this case it seems like ego wants an expensive red sports car, is ego being played by more primitive parts that are under the water about, again, survival and reproducing? And that's of course the underlying reason why somebody goes out and buys a $70,000 red sports car. It's about survival and reproducing and not much else, although the conscious mind is not aware of that. So what's the what was that, some kind of a waffle? Lego my ego is likely a truth drop. It's likely I pulled that out years ago. I pointed, I talked about it in a few videos. I said that's likely a truth drop. Lego my ego. It's let go of my ego. Let go of my ego, you corrupting society, son of a bitch. It's a truth drop without the people that make the waffles being in on it. It's just somehow this shit comes out. Ego is demonized in these circles, but ego is part of who we all are. It simply needs to be controlled and kept in check, not totally eliminated. Make it work for us, or the aspect of what we should be working on, instead of ego in most people dominates the rest. It's a little Napoleon that gets out of control. So observe ego. Observe what it wants from a third-person perspective. Observe it from a distance. In stepping back and looking down on it from afar or from high enough allows us to see whenever we are being driven by ego. Now, again, I don't mean to go back and start talking about the school system, but these are just basic common sense things. There's no genius in what I'm delivering here, but this is the basic psychology humans should be aware of, but they should teach you this in third grade, fourth grade. The aspects of you, ego, they won't touch it in school, which just proves by itself basically that school K through 12 is just a giant manipulation, one giant indoctrination, so people become good little Borg implanted cyborgs for society. Up to number 7, there's your straw man in terms of who you are. This is first name all caps, last name all caps, the legal fiction and the manipulation that the system needs to do business with this legal fiction. You can't do business directly with a sovereign entity of spirit. It must create this side phantom, the legal fiction of first name caps, last name caps on credit cards and documents like birth certificates does business through it. Of course, it wants you to believe that it's you, so you, as a conscious creative being, breathe life into it. It needs that. And of course, most people believe 100% that the straw man is them. They don't have any idea of what we're talking about, and they would call us conspiracy theorists for even mentioning it. So just to end this segment, we could do hours and hours on this, but why this exists, the straw man exists, has to do with the system trying to establish mini contracts with us, getting us to root to this reality, breathe life into their systems, making the ties that bind, and a lot of other things that we don't have time to discuss at this time. Incredibly, we are up to now 7 different aspects of the whole you, or what society, these are the aspects society wants us focused on. But there's another part that's never mentioned by anybody in authority or academia or society. And the one that's not mentioned, the other part, is the most important part, the most important thing. But when most people are asked to describe themselves, they'll pick and they'll talk about the list just mentioned, the list that was just laid out before mentioning this coming now most important part. What do you think it is? Of course, the aspect of you that is soul, spirit, whatever words you want to use. The perfect semantics here are not important. Matt, you're not doing a good job differentiating soul from spirit. You know what? I don't think it's not a spelling bee. I don't think that I'm going to be graded on that as long as the concepts come out in a general sense. Soul, spirit, whatever. All right. People spend too much time on, well, what exactly is the soul versus spirit? As long as the intention comes out correct, who cares? Whatever you call it, this is the part of you that, in my opinion, is not here. Or an aspect of it might be here, but the heart of it isn't here, in my opinion. Your spirit somewhere else. It's not in the body, trapped in this snow globe. There's a tether of some kind, probably. Tether through consciousness. It's not here. It's not in this corrupted place where little assholes like George Bush have power. Jerks like that. It just couldn't be. No way. It has a connection to you that is here, and a connection to the other aspects we just talked about. And that connection is through, or the bridge to me is best summed up as not the Bifrost from Thor, but basically maybe that's what it's supposed to be. Consciousness. Consciousness is to me, the tether, or what would connect everything we are in this avatar to spiritual side that's not here, or some say a larger aspect of yourself. Some people call higher self. All right. Now, how it comes, it connects through consciousness, the potential portal of the heart chakra, and maybe that's what that emerald green color is all about. That's on the table. But again, knowing the exact specs and technicals on how it works, it's not necessary. It's nothing you're going to be graded on, as long as you have a general understanding of potentially these things may exist, and a potential intention on how do you make all the parts work together. So this biggie, what we're talking about now, not Biggie Smalls, but this biggie in terms of who people really are, not what society wants them to believe, the eighth part of you, this is something that is just incredibly not mentioned. The screen really doesn't want anybody going here. And before we switch gears into part two, this is still kind of making the list. Incredibly, by some people's definitions, this list could get even longer. 8 could go to 10, could go to whatever. There's many more aspects by some people's definition. For example, there are things somebody might say, Matt, you're not even talking about Jung's shadow self. When you're not talking about, Matt, Native American Wetiko, some sort of virus or like a demon in you, that's the selfish egregore that people are carrying around with them, or similar to Don Juan's mention of the mind parasite. This category also includes potential entity attachment into some demonic possession. People, maybe you could add to the list these very, very negative things could be part, but I'm not. They're not. To me, they're like again more like demonic entities things. I'm not going to make them part of this list. I'm just saying who some people are. Maybe lucky that it's maybe not part of us, but some people, the list would be longer. And then some people would say, Matt, things like Wetiko or shadow self, nobody ever completely purifies themselves from that. So I'm just saying some people would say the list should be even longer. But in terms of these negative things, I'm not going to continue to talk about them. We all know the potential for some of this stuff exists. And then we have, the famous bands, puppets pop up like The Who, and they sing, "Who are you? Who are you?" Truth drop. Truth drop in music comes out everywhere. Who are you, though? It's a big-ass multiple-choice question, and the final letter to choose is all of the above. But in terms of that, all of the above, except the last part we talked about, the first 7 through 8, that is all you are. In terms of what comes to the forefront, that what you want to foster or bring to the forefront to control the other aspects, you have to decide that. Most people don't make a conscious or active decision on what part is the most important part. They just go along with whatever society dictates, of course. Okay, here's the key. If you didn't really take in too much of what I just presented, that's fine. All you need to take out of it is there are all these multiple aspects of self, and most people point to the wrong things. And they're not really pointing at soul, spirit, etc. If you forgot everything I said, that's all you need. And what this video is about, remember, is what does work on self mean? So before I get into that, it's kind of like, think of the whole process we go through. I've been talking a lot about the 3 steps. The 3 steps: 1, you see the trick. Society lays down the trick. In what area? In every area. Part 2, what type of reality could pull that off over and over, decade after decade? And then you get through that and you say, well, what does all this tell me about myself? So work on self, you're not even really ready to really explore that until you have gone through all the muck, or until you have explored all the conspiracy, until you have seen that, oh, there's another fake event, and how could they possibly pull this off for the thousandth time? And oh, my language itself is a manipulated spellcraft, and everything's a fraud. You just throw up and say, I've had enough. I've had enough. It's really, you are only really ready to work on self when you're ready to leave the shenanigans and the endless distraction of the screen behind. You won't work on self properly unless you've kind of gone through the muck. I don't see any other way. Maybe there is a way. You don't have to go through all this conspiracy that I went through. But again, mentioning to what I said earlier coming in, I can't stay here forever. We're not all at the same level. I will go back and do more screen exercises in hope that people will say what we've been saying. I've seen enough. Thank you, Matt. I don't need to see anymore. I don't need to see another fake event. There's no way a real world could pull all this shit off. So I'm now ready to work on self. I'll talk about the important stuff I talk about now, but then I will return to the screen. You understand that the process that I think that I've outlined here, I think works. Okay, if you're ready to graduate, then graduate. I'm going to go back and probably break down the Tool CD case, and then I'm going to talk about a movie and things like that. If you've seen enough, you've seen enough. I don't know. I shouldn't be talking to the trolls, but you understand. I want everybody to understand the process here. I think the process that the general idea of how this channel is out to work, I think works. All right. So now you've been through it. What does work on self mean? Okay. You're finally ready to take that notion seriously. So the first thing to do is that on our list, what are the first 7 or so have in common? We talked about, Freud's id, ego, superego, the frontal lobes, unconscious mind, all that stuff. What does it have in common, those things? Well, they're all part of this place, more kind of in line with the avatar or with the brain. They're part of this 3D snow globe. They're rooted here. They were born of here and they will die of here. They will never live past this 3D plane of existence. They'll only ever live and operate here. They'll die on the day of your death. It's only the last part, what we talked about, the 8th part, not the demonic possession, the part soul, spirit, number 8. It's only that part that goes on after death, right? Pretty simple, but how many people truly realize, this? You guys do, but people around us and that go through society as brainwashed zombies, they don't have a clue as to what we're talking about here. So what's the only part of you that whatever stands behind the screen does not acknowledge? The only part of you, well, soul, spirit, it doesn't even want you going there. It's the soul and spirit part, the screen, society. It not only doesn't mention this aspect of you, basically at all, it goes out of its way to belittle anybody who investigates it. If it, as society or as the screen, mentions that part of you, that most important part of you at all, it's usually like a manipulation or a hidden truth that it has to present. For example, how it has to do business like this, like the song Charlie Daniels Band, The Devil Went Down to Georgia. Yeah, the society and screen mentions soul from time to time. Sometimes in a horror movie, you'll be damned soul, be damned to hell, or spirit. From time to time, it'll mention these things, but usually it's a story or a punishment, or it's never saying kind of what we're exploring here. It's never saying that the screen itself, Don Lemons of the world, never saying get in touch with your spiritual side. They hide the spiritual side. They want most people to believe that doesn't even exist in them. Yeah, things will come up. The devil went down to Georgia. He was looking for a soul to steal. That's the screen mentioning soul, Matt. But what's the message? Johnny beat the devil in a fiddle contest. Is that his name, Johnny? Well, Johnny is he a metaphor for the truth community? He was played, used, and manipulated. The devil didn't lose no fiddle competition to Johnny. The devil faked it. He lost on purpose. That way Johnny can go further down toward the abyss, because what was his reward? A golden fiddle. And what do you think he did with that golden fiddle? Start orphanages all over the world? No, he probably bought a bunch of cocaine. He probably had a bunch of women on the side. His wife, he used it to damn and doom himself. He was in love with the materialism. He coveted it into his bed, the golden fiddle, like the Precious, Smeagol did to the Precious. My Precious. The devil lost that on purpose. Of course. So, yeah, the screen mentions soul spirit from time to time, but never in a way that doesn't benefit itself. In terms of the list of all things that are you, what parts of you then on that list has the Pennywise the screen, bred from birth? What parts has it bred from birth or got you to focus on from birth? Breathe the first 7 parts. Part of you that is attached to this place, the parts of you that only survive while your body is in this place. I mean, this is one of the reasons the list is so long. If it could make the list even longer and it could distract you further with more aspects of yourself, I think it would try to do that. 31 flavors of you or more is best from its perspective, because only one flavor is really the way out of here, through an understanding of what you really are and what you're here for. So if the spiritual road is all that really matters, well, if you could get even more roads surrounding that, well, there's more possible things you could call you, more distraction. You know, there's so many aspects of a, quote, real person here, so many aspects of you that are attached to this place. So people get confused when anybody wants to investigate aspects of themselves. There's a, like, even just with this short list, there's a 7 out of 8 chance they'll take one of the 7 yellow brick roads and avoid the road that's metaphysically paved in gold, the road to spiritual self. They'll get on one of the 7 yellow brick roads. And you know where they leave. That society put out there for you to choose. And you know what I say about the breadcrumbs in the yellow. In this case, it's 7 yellow brick roads. They're wet and they're warm. Dorothy is going along. She's meeting aspects of herself along the yellow brick road, being misled by a wizard of smoke and mirrors and being threatened and misled by a witch, when all along the whole time it was just inside her to go home. All she had to do was choose to go home. Click the heels, whatever. She could have done it at any time. There's nothing that says she had to wait till the end. She just didn't know she had the power to do it herself. So let's pause and just start at the most basic level. What's the aspect of you, out of everything we've talked about, the aspect of you that should be developed? How to choose among the list? Well, let's see. Should you and I spend time on something that will die off in the cosmic equivalent of like a half second from now? Or the aspect of you that is timeless? Along those lines, should we use the aspects of ourselves and focus on the aspects of ourselves that are constantly played, used, and manipulated by the system, or potentially something that is untouchable by the system? Something that's timeless or something that dies off in about a millisecond with the avatar? Not sure. That's a tough question. It's a darn tough question. Maybe as tough as this question. Would you rather take a vacation, all expenses paid, to the Great Pyramid at Giza? Or would you rather take 2 weeks off to peel the dead skin off Hillary Clinton's back while she sits upright in the bathtub? I think that choice is obvious as well. I would think using the tools of this reality to focus on and foster the timeless aspect of oneself would be best. But that's just my opinion. Remember the purpose of this video again. What the heck does work on oneself even mean? And we've heard people in our community talk about this a lot. We've heard about shadow work, for example. Again, in terms of definitions, reciting definitions, it's pointless. I don't really know what shadow work means. I don't really care. It doesn't really matter. As long as we have the basics, as long as we're putting our intentions in the right place. Do we have to be able to recite a Webster's definition of shadow work? No, I'm sure whatever it is, using simple processes like these, this advice to get in touch with the most important parts of ourselves would probably help in that regard as well. You know, I don't give a squirt of piss to study anything Freud or Jung has to say. As Laura Ingalls said, that was Laura Ingalls from Little House on the Prairie in my last video. She said, tell me about Emerson. He said, Emerson said this and that, but then she says, Laura Ingalls said, truth is within yourself. Yeah, you just have to find it. If this society has created a you that identifies with the first 7 on the list, the transient, temporary aspects, the false self, that everything that can be, the parts of you that can be manipulated, you know, if that's what society has conditioned you to identify with, then to me, that's the shadow that temporarily lives here, that can be controlled and manipulated by the screen and its asshole minions. If Wetiko is real, or if Castaneda was right about Mind Virus, once again, the exact details doesn't matter, because the process of finding spiritual self is the same. It's the same. That's the beauty of it. No matter how big the list gets, once you find the correct path, it doesn't matter if there are 5 other paths or 5,000 paths. I've chosen the correct path, or you found the correct path. Someone said, well, look, there's a whole series of new paths over here we didn't know about. Oh, well, so I'm taking this one. This is the correct one. There's 1,000 new paths. That's what it'll do. So what? So what? It wants to create the confusion. Once somebody spending months and months analyzing Freud's id, ego, Sigmund the Sea Monster's superego, who cares? It's just a distraction. You know, whether he was in on it or not, it keeps you away from spiritual self. Oh, there's parts of my mind that id, ego, superego. It's a waste of time and a deception. So there are all these aspects of yourself in this snow globe incarnation. He said globe. Society, the minions, and the screen push to the forefront the aspects of you that are overall of little importance, the ones that can be used, played, manipulated, and the ones that are rooted here. The society, minions, and the George Bush creature assholes, they never mention, in a positive way at least, soul or spirit. They never mention that that's part of you. And again, if the screen mentions it, it's something negative, like in a horror flick. It'll take your soul, that thing that hides in the barn. That thing that hides in the barn will take your soul. It's always like something like that. So if you're confused, always remember the Don Lemon rule. Our friendly neighborhood Don Lemon on CNN, who's always giving us the best advice. He's our best friend. If Don Lemon is telling you something and he's delivering it as important, then we know the truth lies somewhere else, or probably in the complete opposite direction. So Don the Lemon will never talk about you as a spiritual being. Don the Lemon is one of their more pathetic minions. If unsure where to start, just start here. When in doubt, observe the screen. Observe its reflection that shows up in the real world called society. See what society wants from you and just do the opposite. So in this case, regarding specifically what we're talking now, you could apply what I just said to everything for the most part, but in this particular case, what parts of you does society acknowledge, and better yet, what does it want you to exercise and build up and breathe life into and place up on a pedestal and put stock and importance in? So work on self, the title of this video, or the purpose of this video, means to find the aspect of you that these assholes don't acknowledge, or worse, hide from you. These assholes stole the wrong effing exam. That's from Animal House. So, of course, the second great example is society shows me how important a big, expensive car is. It shows me how important a big Toll Brothers home is with that grand entranceway. It shows me how important big job titles are, so we can just covet the business card like the American Psycho. You know, so then you could say, what parts of me is pleased by those sorts of horse apples? What sorts of me kind of likes that stuff or gets off on it? Because that's probably not where you want to keep working out. You want to keep those parts in check. What parts of you look around at your 2,000 square foot master bedroom and are all proud of yourself? And you and your wife sleep in a place so big that it could house 24 African villages in the one room. When you investigate spiritual self, or put that aspect first in line, society and the screen doesn't like that one bit, because that will end up feeding society nothing. That doesn't usually lead to a big little red Corvette. You know, the spiritual side, putting that first starves it. The rest is used and manipulated to feed it, probably literally. Soon you'll develop these Jedi skills on your own. You won't have to use your basic tools and pull them out every time, like pull this one out and it says, compare it to this. Does Ryan Seacrest and Anderson Cooper want me to be interested in this thing? And if so, pursue the opposite. You can pull out little notes like what's contained in a Chinese fortune cookie. You can do that, but eventually your own inner tuning fork will start to resonate, and your own inner compass will just show you the way. You won't need to compare it to little benchmarks that say, does Ryan Cooper and Ryan it's probably the same entity. So you could say Ryan Cooper or Anderson Seacrest or say Don Lemon. They're probably triplets from the same mother. If you trace the lineage back far enough, I'm not kidding. So you don't have to use those cheat codes. Does it want me to be interested in this thing? If it wants my interest in this thing, then I'll do the opposite. Soon you'll just know the right direction. Okay? The correct way is just natural when you're in touch with certain parts of yourself. The correct way is the ultimate real, not the desert of the real. It's just natural. But since we've been brainwashed from birth to not connect to that spiritual side, it does take work to find it, or it takes work to dust it off. It's like jump-starting an old car. This, in my opinion, is work on self. This is self-work, with the stuff that's thrown around in the truth community all the time without really being explained. So the first thing to ask is, what part of self? What are you going to choose? What the heck? But it's easy, right? But once you clarify it, and we're clarifying, and most of the zombies around us will never even think about these things. But in terms of the truth community talking about work on self, well, this has to be it. I mean, what else could self-work be in these truth circles? More bicep curls because you don't have enough mass in the belly of the bicep muscle? I mean, you don't have a big enough peak? Just self-work on the body, or self-work with the ego? No, self-work just has to be removing the distraction to connect to spiritual self. So you'll, quote, just feel it when the connections are made or the car jump starts in the right place. You'll just feel it, which is much different than Nike's Just Do It, which calls for action without feeling. Using a personal example, my own personal example, spiritual bridge is, for example, the side of me that actually thanks my outdoor plants and flowers for being so beautiful all summer long. When it's just about a week away from, say, the first frost, I'll go around. I haven't done this for long. Go around and say, first frost is coming. You guys are kind of doomed, but thank you. Thank you for your pretty flowers. And I don't know why I do that. It's dumb. I do all the lots of sorts of dumb stuff like that now, but it just feels good. It feels a connection to spiritual self. All right. As you know, I've mentioned before, I don't know what it was, just over 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, there's a robin's nest in my door wreath, and it had the little blue eggs. And I just took it and chucked it in the woods, like while dialing for a mushroom large pizza. Just threw it in the woods. Eggs smashed. I didn't give a crap about the mother or the eggs back then. It was just like most people of today. I was expert, of course. If I did feel bad about it for just a moment, then what happens is certain parts of you that have been manipulated take over, like ego. And I was expert, just like everyone else, in the rationalization of it all and the justification. If I felt bad for a second after I threw that, and I'm, human, I almost said it. I didn't say only. If I threw it and I kind of felt bad, and here comes the rationalization that will just explain it away. I said to myself probably, well, if those robins were so stupid as to build a nest in my door, then per like Darwin's law of the fittest, it deserved to die. The rationalizations that come from society and science. I was just helping the gene pool because I didn't allow the real dumb ones to reproduce. And at the time, I'm sure I was very pleased with Darwin for giving me that excuse for my actions. And maybe that's, in general, what Darwin's is for. Maybe that's one of the purposes of Darwin and his manipulation. So where am I today? Like 2 years ago, I had to keep my garage door open for 2 weeks or more. Rain coming in, whatever, because a mother bird had gotten in there and was sitting on the eggs, or they had hatched. I forget what it was, but I just had to leave it open, until everything was settled. You can't just move the nest. If you move the nest, they're all going to die. You can't touch the nest. Today, when I see roadkill, I see a squirrel, roadkill. I will pull out the line from Cold Mountain. Sorry, buddy. I'm sorry. Hope you're in a better place. You were a real beauty. That's what she said to the goat before she put the knife through the goat so Inman WP, Inman could get some meat. She said to the goat, "You're a real beauty," before she stuck the knife through it. That's generally the same scene as when she says, "What are you going to do, end my young life?" I think there is very strong emotion that comes up or rises up in real people when doing things and taking action that is connected with opening the channel to the spiritual connection or strengthening the channel to the spiritual connection and overcoming all the petty little things that the society wants you to be or wants you to believe you are. There's huge emotion that comes from that. And I realize certain emotions can be complete manipulations of this place. So it's important to know where the emotion comes from and what emotions are destructive. Of course, there's destructive emotions that are fostered by this system and its minions. Hate is an emotion. The lower chakras can deliver some pretty intense emotions into young people about to get their rocks off in the backseat of a Chevy Impala. I mean, these are all emotions. All emotions are not created equal. Now, some people say, maybe certain parts of this community would say, all emotions are of the body and in some way rooted to this place, and therefore they are bad. And I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I believe a spiritually connected being becomes a highly emotional being. All right? That's why many of you listening to this, based on what's going on now, not because you're afraid of it in any way, leveling up into becoming a higher evolution of a spiritual being. You're an emotional mess, many of you listening to this. So am I. This is natural. Not because we're afraid if you're crying or whatever. You're not afraid of. I'm not trying to put this in your mind. Like, no, I guarantee you're not afraid of what's happening. It's just the emotions that come out when you become a greater spiritual being. You understand what I'm saying. It's hard to put into words, but I don't believe. Some people say the life's mission to purge the emotions while meditating in front of a head of lettuce on some mountain someday. I just think the emotional flood that many of us are experiencing now is just an absolute natural part of a proper progression, in my opinion. Right? Many smart people believe you were put here as an aspect of something greater than yourself. You have a spiritual bridge to it through Thor's, Bifrost, if that's an analogy or a truth drop in some way. And you're put here to experience these things, all right? Not to purge them. There's another aspect of you. You're here, or you choose to be here for the experience. These experiences are part of it, not to purge them and to experience nothing. Along these same lines, putting focus and attention onto that eighth aspect. Guys, anybody, please, there's no rhyme or reason to my numbers here. I just started making a list on a piece of paper. Please don't be analyzing numbers. I just don't do business like that. So the eighth aspect, the spiritual self, putting the attention there, that doesn't necessarily mean all the others need to be destroyed or shunned or left behind or destroyed. No, it's all part of who you are in this, at least in this incarnation, on this train stop. Just like ego, these other aspects have to be kept under control. The purpose of society and the asshole minions is to make the other parts of you more dominant and to crush spiritual self. So you just flip it. Healthy body, that's one of the things on the list. That's nice. We want to be healthy, but does anybody need ripped abs and no-carb diets so one can stare at six-pack abs in the mirror all day? Do we really need that? Truth in movies, truth in the absurd. Is that scene from Step Brothers? You remember Will Ferrell's up in the treehouse with, I forget the other actor's name. Will Ferrell's brother from Step Brothers, Derek, pulls up his shirt. He's like, you want to touch these six-pack abs. I haven't had a carb since 2004. So this guy, Derek, is the biggest asshole in movie history who's not violent. and his whole life is about materialism. He's like, "What's your problem?" It's like, "I don't know. I have the opposite of a problem. I made over $500K last year as the executive vice president of a helicopter leasing company. I have the opposite of a problem." So it's just this materialism, the body, in love with his body. I haven't had a carb since 2004. He oils his abs up, and truth in the business. Now, whoever made that, are they in on it? No, but truth of reality flowed through it, as what typically happens, right? So it doesn't mean, it just this is an example from Step Brothers where one aspect in that case, that dominated this person's being. And when one of the aspects that are associated with this place dominate the aspect of someone's being, then the spiritual aspect gets pushed lower and lower and lower until it's completely forgotten about. So don't think of these other aspects like ego as always the redheaded stepchild beaten up in this community. Don't think of ego and the other aspects, or subconscious or whatever. Don't think of them as demons or bad things. It's the balanced whole of a human being that is our goal here. I mean, a balanced human being is a very beautiful thing, in balance, avoiding the manipulations of society and the screen. The main role of society is to unbalance the human, and in my opinion, an unbalanced human that puts more emphasis in the wrong areas, it actually feeds the system, literally feeds it energy that they literally feed from as sustenance or nourishment. The multiple aspects of who you are can be used to benefit the spiritual journey. They're not to be destroyed or shunned or pushed down, or you pretend they're not there. All the aspects can benefit the spiritual journey or benefit the other aspect of you that's experiencing living this life through you, if you want to put it that way. Okay, there's no evidence that the ego was created by the minion parasite or a mind virus and we shouldn't have ego. There's no evidence of that. It might be neat to say in certain truth circles, there's no evidence of that. There's a lot. Ego can be a natural thing if it's kept in check. There's a lot of evidence that says ego, per what society and its minions have done to us, it's been hijacked, of course. It's been corrupted by these assholes. It's been brought to the forefront. But that's not a Borg implant. It's not a natural Borg implant. It's probably part of this experience. It's a natural, needed part of the life experience. Or at least it should be, or it was. Of course, it's been hijacked and been brought to the front by the society, handed the whip, and the other parts, or the more important parts, have been pushed down, and the lemons of the world won't even mention the other important parts of you, like spiritual self or soul. And to wrap this up, just a reminder, most of my presentations are religion neutral, very religion neutral. Not because I don't want to lose subscribers, because of those people who consider themselves very religious. Most here are Christians. It's not because of that. I think these general life lessons and how to avoid the manipulations of the screen apply no matter what, quote, your religion. So I may use the term sift through the distraction to find the spiritual connection to part of you that's not here. I say that a lot. I believe that. But a Christian, for example, may agree with me, but say the aspect, it would just do it a little bit different. The connection to, say, Holy Spirit, for example, or the connection to the teachings of Jesus Christ. The basics of what I'm saying, I think, can be applied. It's just slight differences on the fringe. That's why, the people aren't unsubbing my channel, because this stuff applies no matter what. It's not going to apply to just a Christian and not a Hindu, or not someone who's a Muslim who believes in Islam. It's not going to be anything that's only one but not the other, and excludes segments of real human beings. That ain't going to be the way. That's not the way. We all agree there is a corrupter here in this reality, no matter what you want to call it, no matter what you want to point at. There's no doubt it wants you identifying with the first 7 aspects that I listed out, and not the spiritual or soul side, of course. So via that presentation, it seems all-inclusive, but as usual, one group does need to be left out. I'm sorry, I don't see room for you here, unless I'm missing something. Once again, drum roll, the group that needs to be left out are the complete atheists who believe in the Big Bang, that something blowed up a long time ago, and just, monkey men and things crawling out of the sea, flopping around on the beach looking for food, and those things just, instead of deciding to go back into the sea where their food source is, they decided, I guess, to keep rolling around up in the grass, and there's no food up there, but somehow they found a way to live. Atheists that believe in all this Stephen Hawking nonsense. I don't see any room for you here. I'd love to include you. The train's big. The back part of Snowpiercer, they call the tail. You can go in the tail. I mean, that's not a good example. That whole caste system that existed on Snowpiercer, bad example. But I'd like to get the atheists into the tail of Snowpiercer, but they don't give me any opportunity. They won't talk about the whole point of this whole presentation is spiritual side and connection to something here, and this is just a train stop, and you're a timeless being, and just thinking they have their hourglasses flipped and their sands running. It's that soap opera that is it As the World Turns that use the sand running through the hourglass. That's their whole life. There is no existence to them after this life. And it is going to be very unfortunate for them for several reasons, one of which we've toyed with the idea that you basically, on the moment of your death, you get what you expect to get. You've been manipulated by the society into learned helplessness and to, that you have no power, no say at all. You have to beg for forgiveness and whatever. Just the atheists I hope they don't get what they think, if that's the case, because they're going to get their wish. They're going to be worm food. So, although this has been religion neutral, where we agree 95% of the places, this is, as once again, not atheist neutral. I'm at a podium, they're at a podium that they would like to rebut. They would say, this asshole, not that he stole the wrong exam, this asshole is telling you to find a part of yourself. There's no evidence that it exists. I've already won the debate. This asshole, this Matt, he's saying find a part of yourself. And in my presentation as the atheist, as I have a Stephen Hawking necklace on, there's no evidence that part even exists. He can't win this debate. Of course, id, ego, superego, we have all the work of Freud. It's a Freudian slip. He said fraud when he should have said Freud. And I'm still presenting at the podium as the atheist. Say, we know there are subconscious and unconscious processes, or did you decide consciously how much to sweat, Matt? But he's saying connect to spiritual self. This asshole, there's no proof of that. You can't ever point to it. There's no scientific evidence of it. And you know what? It reminds me of that scene in the movie Contact with Jodie Foster, where she's outside of the party talking to, what's his name? Dr. Palmer Joss, I think, was Matthew McConaughey. And she's saying, Dr. Arroway is saying, well, you're so religious and you believe in God, and there's just, all we have is science. There's no evidence of it or anything like that. And why do you base your beliefs on just thin air? And he says, her father died when she was very young. If you saw the movie, he says, did you love your father? And she's taken aback. Oh, yes, almost as much as Dr. Lecter. Well, prove it. Prove you loved your father. She's like, her jaw drops like, oh, yeah. Can't prove that. There are some things that kind of can't be put into a test tube or can't be measured by those that run around their laboratories with their Stephen Hawking necklaces on. Dr. Arroway got a real lesson, but that ain't a truth drop. That's just a movie. And guys, the presentation's over, but I just said movie. I was thinking about movies. I'll talk too quickly about two movies that most people shouldn't see. I think James sent me recommendations on these truth in movies at the very highest level, like the Dr. Parnassus, which, we had Howdy broke down the hidden meeting that escaped me in Donnie Darko. But if you are into like 2001: A Space Odyssey and just are into movies that are just delivering potential truth at the highest levels, and they're bizarre and they're not great movies. Valley of the Gods, I mean, it's weird. It is weird. Some people are going to love it, and some people are going to absolutely hate it. The trailer looks much more interesting than the movie itself is. I don't even know what to say about it. It's Valley of the Gods. It's just bizarre. It's just bizarre. But one thing that I was thinking of in terms of the set of Valley of the Gods, where John Malkovich is supposed to be the richest person in the world, and it doesn't look like a movie set to me. The intricacy of it, it looks like it is some sort of castle owned by some trillionaire, somebody that sits in the shadows. That where I'm thinking as I'm watching it, where did they film this thing? They didn't make a set like this. This house really exists, and it gets into that theme that when they show the world's richest people, Bill Gates, this is new money. There's obviously the trillionaires exist, and then you get to a level they don't have any money, but they don't need money. There is no bank account you could point to because they don't need money. They don't ever need a passport. That level, to me, exists, and that's kind of Malkovich's place in Valley of the Gods. But again, I'm not recommending this. No. 10% will just love it as this esoteric experience, but it's very strange and not for most people. The other is it Vivarium? Terrarium? I think it's Vivarium, but it's like Terrarium, where whoever that actor that played, he'll just forever be known as Mark Zuckerberg in The Social Network. You just see, it's like Matt Damon. You just see Matt Damon. And this guy, you don't see the actor. You just see Mark Zuckerberg in everything he's in. He just has no ability to act. It's the same guy. Well, I haven't seen all his stuff, so that's not fair. But it's this weird, they're taken in and shown, he and his girlfriend are shown this tract home in a really creepy setting. And they're kind of left in this tract home, and they're deciding if they want to buy it. Every home looks like the other home. There's just thousands of them. So they're like, let's get out of here. And they drive around, and it just they keep looping back to the house. They're in some sort of matrix or trapped reality. And the reason I'm mentioning it is a truth drop movie. It is not right for most people. It's not as weird as Valley of the Gods. Much more watchable for most people and enjoyable. I think it's called Vivarium. The same green color, once again. But the reason I'm mentioning it is if you liked the movie, it's the Boys from Brazil is a pretty good movie. It's old. It's very old. Is it Rock Hudson and probably from the early 70s about Nazi hunters, or where these Nazis really did get to South America and Brazil. It's a good movie, but people, if you're fascinated by there's a kid that plays, let's just say he's an offspring of Hitler. We'll just leave it at that. And they're twins of him or clones of him. The way this kid is so, it's the greatest child performance of all time, in my opinion, from the Boys from Brazil, the little kid that plays little Hitler. And he only comes up in 3 short segments of the movie, but it's almost worth seeing the movie for that. It's incredible what this kid does. And he didn't really do much acting after that. But the point is, if you liked that, and you're listening to what I'm saying, is that, yeah, the scenes with that kid from Boys of Brazil were just your hair stand up on the back of your neck, or the acting performance was so incredible. You didn't see a little actor playing the same. You literally saw like a little incarnation of Hitler. Sorry if it's a spoiler. The movie's only about 45 years old. But there's a kid that's just like that. Now he screams and does some other things, but it's very similar if Vivarium is overall not great. Okay, but if you're at all struggling, like you're going to turn it off, wait till the kid wait till the kid shows up. And then it gets very, very interesting and creepy, just like Boys from Brazil. All right, guys, thanks.